Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
In the heart of the next police chief, there should be a continuing dread, a fear, a loathing of a particular act, a particular thing. And that should be that his officers approach any citizen absent probable cause, absent an articulable suspicion. The coming chief should have that as a primary consideration, whereas Chief Fred Fletcher, the current man in that office and that employment, does not have that consideration. The new chief should be one who dreads the idea of a city employee killing in a summary fashion a citizen of the United States, a citizen of Tennessee, and a person domiciled or resident in Chattanooga. He should dread the thought. He should loathe the prospect of a city employee under his government killing in a summary fashion, extrajudicially, though in a statutorily permitted way, killing a citizen execution style. It happens all around the country. It happens over and over again, and the people accept it. Notice the Philando Castile jury clearing the officer. And then another case about the same time, another man cleared by a jury of cleared in the killing of a man on the ground, shot dead, shot down. We have to have in the breast of the coming chief of police this consideration and this concern. And Mayor Andy Burke is going to be taking advice from a committee of 5 that will go through applications for chief of police in Chattanooga. And that dread should be there. There should be in the next chief a desire for reform that is not currently in the heart and the mind of Chief Fred Fletcher, who has allowed many, many grievous cancers to grow unmolested in the ranks. And doing so and spiting the good officer, spiting and rejecting the public interest claims of the good and obedient and subservient to the law officer in the uniform, the good cop, right? There are good cops, and they are being given to discredit by the 90% who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or whatever percentage it is. It is a larger percentage than we think. I would like to suggest, based on our reporting here at Nooga Radio, and based on a lawsuit filed a few days ago by Hanson Melvin with the aid of McCoon Law Firm, and on its staff, one of the best attorneys in Chattanooga, Clay Whitaker, assembling the arguments, assembling the claims of the walking while black defendant, right? A man who's accused of walking while black, having done nothing wrong, approached and confronted, manhandled, charged, screamed at, the word MF used loudly in his ear. Drop the MFing keys, Officer David Campbell shouted at him as he arrested him without probable cause, walking while being a black man, having done nothing wrong. There is a systemic problem in the Chattanooga Police Department, and it's good that Chief Fred Fletcher is leaving, because he has done nothing or done little. Maybe he has done some things, but he has done little or has done an insufficient amount of reform to end the scourge of abuse in Chattanooga. And I say that even in light of, even though Chattanooga is in many ways much milder than other jurisdictions, there are abuse cases that you can watch on YouTube that are simply astounding, where people are pummeled and pounded and tased and killed under police control. And then, of course, after they're shot down and tased to death, they're handcuffed. That's standard procedure. Even Philando Castile almost was handcuffed as he lay dying, and many others as well. There is something remarkable about this continuing tide of abuse, and the case filed in circuit court by Clay Whitaker on behalf of Hanson Melvin lays out the territory. It lays out the ground, and it's worth considering what happened. I think, though, what we need to look at first is Hanson Melvin as a hero. I call him Mayor Melvin because I think he's the kind of man who could become a mayor in future years after he makes the right connections and becomes perhaps connected politically. He's a working man, works at the Coca-Cola plant, has worked all kinds of jobs, knows everybody. It seems when I've gone with him to Chattanooga downtown, when we've gone to visit courts and people and trying to help investigate his innocency and protect his innocency by reporting on it and reporting on this case. We found that he knows everybody. He goes down the street, he knows this person, he knows that person, and he comes into a building and someone else he knows is there and says, "Hey, Hanson, how you doing?" And he says, "How's your mom?" He'll know everybody, it seems. So he's a man who has a very affable and Christian way about him at age 28, father of 3 children, married. And is in constitution an innocent person. And I call him Mayor Hanson Melvin because that's the kind of man we need to have at the head, who has been the victim and now is demanding redress of grievances against whom? Against the corporation, Chattanooga, that has insurance, but whose payments, whose funding is from the taxpayers of Chattanooga. Chattanooga taxpayers pay for the insurance policy that will pay the $500,000 or more in claim that he's making. It probably is a very low amount to ask for, I think, given what happened to him. What happened to Hanson Melvin is policy. Okay, it's not; these things are not accident. They are policy and they are training. And who is in charge of training? Well, Mayor Burke is in charge of training. Because the police department is his. All good things that the police do should go as a credit to Mayor Burke. And the evil things that individual officers do outside of the law, under color of law, those things should go to the discredit of Mayor Burke because they are his servants. The police department serves the executive branch. It is a political department. It is a political department and seeks to affect the politics and policies of government. And the city, by policy, has retained cops who deserve to be fired. David Campbell was fired, and the reporting on his firing pointed out that he repeatedly drove his cruiser at 80 or 90 or even 100 miles an hour on the city streets at night. Very dangerous policy. He was also fired in the abusive arrest of Hanson Melvin. And an earlier case, Thomas Boston, also a young man, stopped and abusively treated by an angry officer. The anger is part of the training, right? If you're trained to allow that, and if you're not held to rebuke by your superiors for angry treatment and violent treatment of the people, then that becomes the policy, right? Not doing something is the policy. And Clay Whitaker has very carefully drawn this complaint to include to suggest not just that David Campbell, the former officer, was a rogue cop. That's not the argument. The argument is not that Campbell is a rogue cop. The argument is that Chattanooga, that the city police department, that Chief Fred Fletcher, indirectly that Andy Burke have as policy an abusive hierarchy, an abusive, permissive training system that does not tell the officer what his limits are. And that is where the crime is. It's not just these are crimes, they are also torts, because Neil Pinkston, the district attorney, the state's prosecutor, right, the man who people vote for in elections, he is in an elected political office. They vote on the man whom they want to prosecute them. It is a delightful option. You have attorney A or attorney B. Attorney B in this case has been Neil Pinkston, who won that spot. Makes you really want to participate in democratic elections, doesn't it? If you can choose the man you want to be your accuser. And that's him, Neil Pinkston, with his staff of prosecuting attorneys. And that's all they do, is they look out for the honor and peace of the state. And yet you should see how they play with the honor and dignity of the state. They compromise at every turn. At every point, they want a plea bargain. They demand a plea bargain. So the peace and dignity of the state is something that Neil Pinkston cares a little bit about. He cares about it only in the form of an actual case that goes to trial. There, he's indignant for the state's honor and integrity and dignity. And he's going to make sure that that criminal pays for his crimes. And we're going to have a trial. We're going to make that man go to jail if we can, or make him pay a heavy fine, because the peace and dignity of this state are at stake. However, it is a meal. And Chief Pinkston with the PD, the Public Defender's Office, both state employees, both representing the state, have a mill operation where 95% of cases are traded down and people get blots on the record. These are crimes here that the officers have committed. And Clay Whitaker, in his complaint, lists these crimes that Neil Pinkston has chosen to ignore. Neil Pinkston, elected official, ignores state crimes. That is an important lesson in the David Campbell case, right? The case that David Campbell is responsible for here, having brought upon himself and upon the city of Chattanooga a lawsuit. The crimes are many. All right, and here's a list. And I'm not going to give the Tennessee Code annotated citations, but let's just hear the subject matter of these state crimes by a state agent under color of law in his office and also in his person, because these crimes were not done under the real authority of the law, but under the pretended authority of the law in his personal capacity. So you have a man acting in his personal capacity to abuse Hanson Melvin and his wife Tara, who is a co-plaintiff in this complaint, asking for $500,000. The crimes: illegal, unconstitutional search and seizure to prevent, and the city has not acted to prevent the commission of crime, including assault, aggravated assault, kidnapping. In the Holy Scriptures, kidnapping is a capital offense. Kidnapping, aggravated kidnapping, official oppression. There, the citation is Tennessee Code annotated 39-16-403. False imprisonment, official misconduct, perjury. Perjury is a crime. We have pointed that out here repeatedly. And also, the leading deep state reporting in Chattanooga, Nooganomics.com. That's Nooganomics.com, our sponsor of the David Tulis program. And I do welcome you here to the David Tulis Show, 1240 AM, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 high definition 4, HD4. That's also FM. Perjury, suborning perjury, aggravated perjury, conspiracy, civil rights intimidation, and attempt. And this all happened on May 29 and May 30 of last year. Now, there has been acts of commission and acts of omission in this case. And I think what's really stands out that show the policy of intimidation and harassment is this. Hanson Melvin was arrested in his night shoes, just as the same evening another person, a police victim, Rochelle Gelpin, who has not exercised her right for redress of grievances, the statute of limitations having expired. The same night, she, in her nightwear, in her night shoes, was dragged off to jail. And in both cases, the officer said, "This is government property." The officer told her, "Go into your apartment. This is government property." And Hanson Melvin was told, "This is government property." And that was being said by David Campbell, as David Campbell roughed him up and pressed him down upon the hood, upon the roof of a car, and used the MF word. "Drop your MFing keys," David Campbell said. Any city employee that uses language like that in public should be fired. That's a firing offense. No city employee should ever say that. And Mayor Andy Burke allows it to happen. He says nothing about this. Nothing's been done about this that we know of, looking at the results of his government over this city. These are civil wrongs. These are torts. These are personal injuries. There is loss of consortium here. She was a pregnant woman. And on the day that she gave birth, Hanson Melvin, her husband, 28 years old, couldn't be there in the hospital with her. He had to go to court. He was lied against in the report. He was lied against in perjury felony before the grand jury. There's a difference. If you perjure yourself before a body, that's felony perjury. If you perjure yourself in a filing or a police report, that's misdemeanor perjury. These claims are being made as civil offenses, though they are statutory crimes that Neil Pinkston has done nothing about. Neil Pinkston lets these things go just like this, and that's not right. That's not right. And you, the citizen, the resident of Chattanooga, need to know that. You need to know that, and you need to tuck that into the back of your mind. This is a civil case, and it talks about the rogue cop. Is it the rogue cop? No, this is policy. What happened is policy. And the reason is that, as Clay Whitaker and Hanson Melvin point out, there were other instances when Officer Campbell endangered the lives and liberties of the citizens of Chattanooga, and he violated departmental rules, speeding, dangerous driving, and he was allowed to continue to operate, you might say, under the color of law as an employee of the city of Chattanooga, despite his admitting that he had a problem with anger and that he had lost control of his emotions in the William Boston encounter about 3 years before. But many rights of Hanson Melvin were violated. And these are customs well settled and accepted, the lawsuit says, by the City of Chattanooga Police Department. And well settled standard operating procedures and customs that allowed officer defendants and others to use the charge. Well, before daybreak the next day, the following happened. Hanson Melvin brought by Collier Holmes back to his house. Collier gave a few bucks to bail him out and used his car to take Hanson Melvin back to his apartment complex. As they arrived and sat in their car talking, they were descended upon by a swarm of cops, 4 or 5 cars, a bunch of officers. They were roughed up, they were checked out, they were searched, they were told to stand apart, and they were interrogated. And Hanson Melvin is baffled by this, but it was an intimidating act. It was intimidating to the extreme, and it could have been a kind of recon where David Campbell and his fellow officers making this arrangement by private telephone, not on the intercom, right? Not on the police radio. They had a confrontation with this uppity black who stood his ground and who said who refused to give his social security number. And he said when it was demanded of him to show his driver license while he was walking, he said, "That's none of your business." And Campbell knew that Hanson Melvin had problems with his license because of commercial enforcement against him previously. And he didn't have a license to give, didn't have it on him. And if he had, Hanson's answer was right. It's none of your business. And did not giving his social security number, again, none of his business. But Hanson Melvin, just by the way, going back, I'm jumping around here, but going back to the scene of the arrest, he was told this is government property. So again, we have this sense of proprietorship by the officer against the man. And if it's a black man, that sense of proprietorship is even greater. And the fact that a black man talked back, that's humiliating for this officer, this white officer. But what's really remarkable is that all these officers agreed to meet by private communication to surround this defendant who was lied against on the report, a bogus, blatantly lying police report. Perjury. It was perjury, perjury, perjury. And here they were, making him stand with his legs apart, and they ran their hands up and down his legs. He had just gotten out of jail, and he got a friendly visit from the officers. That shows the fact that so many officers cooperated privately to seek out and defend their friend, David Campbell. That shows that there is an endemic and deep problem. Is it racist? I don't call it racist, but I would say these are state actions without probable cause, without articulable suspicions. No officer has any duty, has any authority to speak to any citizen without there being probable cause. The city of Chattanooga, the suit says, has adopted rules and regulations in the manual that allowed the defendant officers and others to falsely arrest the plaintiff without probable cause and to harass him. Now, I've got the whole training manual. David Tulis here. I've got the whole training manual, and I'm mining it for review on how this part of city government works. Remember, police department officers are city employees, okay? They're not a special case. They are not a special priesthood. They do not have authority beyond the law. Their authority is bound by the Constitution. The Constitution protects you, the listener. You are protected by the Constitution. They cannot touch you. They cannot question you. They cannot waylay you, arrest you, seize you, abuse you. They cannot aim a gun at you. They cannot charge you with resisting arrest unless they first have a cause for your arrest, okay? So you can call a cop a name, and he has no authority to stop you. Now, there are some officers who have shown themselves remarkably well. And if you go to Nooganomics.com, I have another case that I've described where an officer held his peace, a most magnificent man. And that is a separate case where the officer though I think he may have done one wrong thing in the nature of the charges he filed against a black defendant. He stood the abuse of that defendant in the back, who sat in the back of his police car, in a most remarkable and encouraging way. So there are officers who do the right thing. There are officers who, you could say, act with Christian forbearance at being abused by vile members of the public. For indeed, there are members of the public who are vile. This is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a couple minutes of your time. I've got some important messages, and I will be back in just a minute. We've got an insight now into the prison system in the state of Tennessee from a writer, Sharon Rondeau, who runs Post and Email, thepostemail.com, a website that has given remarkable attention to Tennessee prison system. This is David Tulis, and I've got some important messages. I thank you for giving me just a minute of your time, just a minute.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A car chase led Tennessee and Georgia cops all the way down the county lines from Marion County down to Dade County. It all started at 10 p.m. on Thursday when a car was spotted that was believed to belong to a man accused of kidnapping, Mr. Jimmy Morton. A chase began, and Mr. Morton is accused of calling 911 and telling the dispatcher he was armed and would kill the cops if they got to him, while they surrounded his vehicle and took him into custody without incident. He now faces charges in Marion County and Dade County. Amanda Davis, an inmate in the Ray County Jail, was found dead in her jail cell, and the TBI has been called in to investigate. Miss Davis was arrested on the 17th and had her first court date on the 20th. The TBI was specifically called in by DA General Mike Taylor. The Hammond Jones hardware store in Lafayette went up in smoke overnight on Tuesday in an apparent arson, and now the Georgia Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner Ralph Hudgens is offering a $10,000 reward for anyone with any info. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Expect a cloudy and wet start to your Thursday with scattered showers and thunder showers continuing through the afternoon. High 78 to 81 tonight. A lingering shower or two. Lows 70 to 72 for Friday. More showers and storms late. Highs near 85. A little drier Saturday. Chattanooga's best kept secret is at Boyd Speedway. Come see the Sportsman Dirt Showdown Race number 3 this Saturday night with a bike race for the kids. Tickets and more at BoydSpeedway.net or Boyd Speedway on Facebook. And I'm Sports Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
We've got a table here at Delia's, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy near the Thrasher Light. There's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nacho chips made fresh every day in the kitchen. Delia's, open every day except the Lord's Day. Treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. 521-7145.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
Hi, this is Nadia behind the green door. You've had ice cream and you've had shaved ice, but have you had snow cream? It is amazing. It's light, airy, fruity snowflakes melting on your tongue. You need to come and see us. Highway 58, green door next to Hardee's.
I've got a $10 bill for you at the best paint store in Chattanooga. David here. Hi. Big savings right now on paint and stains. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Ring up a can and keep that $10 bill. Save on select paints and stains at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Pittsburgh, Porter, Glidden, Prolux, Olympic, Flood. $10 a can. Savings this week. Jim and his team are here to help and advise and to help you hold on to your money. 5529 Hickson Pike. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. ChattanoogaPaint.com.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
This is David Tulis, and I'm glad you're giving me just a couple minutes of your time here. We are live on YouTube, live on Facebook, and our show covers local economy and the free market. There is a great traffic that I would like to tell you about. It is a traffic in human beings, and it is traffic that's not private. It is a public traffic, a public human trafficking organization, and a public slavery organization, and that is protected under law in Tennessee. It is a legal traffic. It's under the Bill of Rights, no less, and it's Section 33. And this says, now get this, that slavery and involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, are forever prohibited in this state. So, in other words, slavery is forbidden unless there is a punishment for crime, and then slavery is allowed. We have in Tennessee a massive slave system overseen by a very fine organization called the Department of Corrections. And covering the Department of Corrections more than any journalist, I think, in the country, certainly more than any journalist in the state of Tennessee, is a woman who's not in Tennessee. Her name is Sharon Rondeau. She has published hundreds of stories. When I just now asked her how many she'd published about the Tennessee prison system, she said it's in the hundreds. And it is a remarkable revelation to follow her work at The Post and Email. And it is an online publication. Is thepostemail.com. Online is called The Post Email Online. No, I'm sorry, thepostemail.com. She lives in Canterbury, Connecticut. She's married to a French Canadian, has 2 grown children, and has a very musical heart and aptitude. But for the past 7 years, has been publishing The Post and Email. Sharon, you've come out. You've done some remarkable reporting. And have many, many contacts in the Tennessee prison system, though you live in Connecticut. Tell my listener the big news that's happening in the state this week. There has been some major reporting done by the official media, you might say, on the prison system. What is that reporting about, and what have you been revealing in your work?
Well, thank you very much again for having me on, David. And yes, it's been a very exciting week for Tennesseans because the corruption and the abuse within particularly the privately run prisons in Tennessee is coming to the fore. There have been 4 broadcasts, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then last night was the last one in this series. And they were hosted and investigated by award-winning journalist Demetria Kalodimos. She's done some very fine work. She has been denied an interview or any kind of tour of the specific facility on which she has focused this week, which is the Core Civic run Trousdale Turner Correctional Complex, TTCC as it's known, acronym. I have done a lot of reporting on that myself. And what I surmise is that at approximately the same time last summer, inmates were contacting her, or the channel, WSMV is their call letters, and also my paper with tons of information, basically all stating that that was the worst prison these prisoners had ever seen. These inmates, many of them have been in several Tennessee prisons, some of them state-run, and going to this Trousdale Turner institution really got their attention. I can say that. They all, to a person, said this is the worst institution we've ever seen. Gang members roaming freely around the prison, controlling everything, which was corroborated by Demetria Kalodimos, Channel 4. That was stated. You get punished for whistleblowing, which is evidently what happened to the former chaplain there. She had her on camera. Everybody was on camera, too. No unnamed sources. They were all on camera. Unexplained deaths. medications and medical situations not being taken care of properly. I have letters from inmates on all of these things, and I've published a good deal of them.
Well, say more about how this comes about, Sharon Rondo. How do these things come about? Why would a for-profit company allow these to happen? After all, it does have a public service image to uphold. It has a public service duty to uphold to these people in state slavery.
Good question. My feeling, my sense from looking at this and being denied interviews just the way Channel 4 was, being denied any kind of information or documentation, is that the bottom line is money. Follow the money, as they say. Many of the inmates have written to me stating that they believe their medications had been withheld. These are prescription, doctor-prescribed, approved medications that they're supposed to have, some of them for life-threatening conditions. And they said, we think that they've just been cut out because they want to save money. So the prescriptions are never dispensed, and then the company doesn't have to reorder them as frequently as they should have to if they were being dispensed. And they feel it all goes back to the bottom line, and it keeps this, it's kind of like a water wheel that just keeps going around and around and keeps these people in prison. They're kept in prison longer than they should be. Many of them are forced to take classes that they don't even qualify for, or the classes they're supposed to have before they leave are not given to them, or finally when they get them, it's months down the road, so they keep them in prison a little bit longer. That they get paid. They get paid for every person occupying a bed in these prisons. And it really is a moneymaker, evidently, for CoreCivic as well as the TDOC. The TDOC is not blameless in this whatsoever.
Well, how is it that a man who's been convicted of a crime and given a sentence, let's say, of 5 years, that he's kept for 5 years and 3 months on account of a class he's taking? How does that arrange? Is that really possible?
Yes, it is possible, because I just spoke with one the other day who had been in contact with me in a number of letters, so I know who he is and that he is telling the truth. That is exactly what happens. And many times, too, the parole board, someone comes up in front of the parole board when he's supposed to, and they just say, oh, well, do another year. I have documentation of that. But outside of that is this problem with the classes. They're mandated to take certain classes before they leave. And it appears that CoreCivic personnel are saying that the classes are ongoing and that, yes, we have so many men enrolled in this course, and they bill for it, but the class isn't taking place. And I have documentation of that, especially in this one inmate's situation. He did get released. And from what I understand, he's going to be interviewing with some people very soon, if he hasn't already. So this is exactly what happens, and they just keep people in the system by prolonging it with the courses. Sometimes it's retaliation. We have a horrible situation right now where a former, he was at Trousdale, and then he was moved to South Central Correctional Facility, which is another CoreCivic prison. He's now at Morgan County, and he's on a hunger strike. It's been more than 2 weeks, and the treatment that he's getting, from what he has described in just 2 letters that he's been able to get out, because they took all of his writing implements and paper, it's absolutely horrendous. And Morgan County won't even give me a status on him. Neither will the TDOC.
Well, can you be
so
specific?
It's very cruel,
Sharon,
and it just keeps people warehoused. And the more people they have in these prisons, the more money everybody makes.
Well, say something more to personalize this man who's on the hunger strike. Who is he? What's his name? Why is he there? What's his sentence? Why is he on a hunger strike? Well, what has he told you? What has he told you about the reasons for that very strong step?
Very good questions, all. His name is Grenda Harmer, Harmer, TDOC number 88710. From what I understand, he does have a criminal background. So I'm going to say that straight out. He admits that he does. So I'm going to take that at face value. There are many people in prisons, as we all know, who are innocent. Who have been indicted improperly, which is a subject for another day. But there are mistakes made. This man does have a criminal background, from what I understand. He was at Trousdale for about 9 months, and then he was very precipitately moved to South Central. Spent 2 months there, and then again very precipitously moved on June 3rd. And they always do this in the early morning hours, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I suppose they have a right to pick the time. So he was moved to Morgan County. From what he's reported to me through, well, I've gotten one letter. I'm hoping to have another one today or tomorrow. But in the one letter, and there's another person receiving letters too on the outside with whom I have spoken, and that person has received letters that report the same. All of his personal property was taken when he arrived there, and essentially they don't like him speaking out. It appears to me to be a very serious attempt to basically take away his First Amendment right. Everyone has the right to speak out. You don't have to agree with what someone says. I don't understand that he was abusive or was yelling at the guards or anything like that, but they took his television, they took his boots. He had a set of boots that were permitted. They were on his property list, because I have a copy of the property list. I have the original of that, actually. And at that point, they said, according to what he said, they said, he's a troublemaker, take care of him. So they put him in high security, stopped dispensing his medications, and he said, I'm not going to eat until they give me my property back and treat me better. And I tried to get a status from TDOC spokeswoman Nisa Taylor this week, and she was very evasive and ended up accusing me of putting out false letters, or letters that I have not verified. Let me say it that way. When something comes to you in the mail in an envelope that's stamped, the TDOC has not inspected the contents of this envelope, or has not inspected the contents. And you get the letter, and the person identifies himself by his number, and you check online, and all of that checks out. That is substantiating that letter, particularly from where I am up in New England. But she feels that I have not done enough to substantiate. Well, I reminded her in an email yesterday that the work I have done has just been corroborated by WSMV in Nashville. That is a major television station, and many of the same stories that Demetria was able to obtain, I also obtained.
Now, this man's medications, what conditions does he have that they are to ameliorate?
There are 3 conditions from what I understand. One is a condition he has where he isn't able to pass urine the way a normal person would, and he needs this muscle relaxer to help him do that. What caused that condition, I do not know. But that's one, and obviously if you can't do that, then toxins build up in your system, and that can kill you. Another one is for acid reflux disease. So he's on the omeprazole for that, and I have a label from his one of his last bottles that said that it had refills on it and everything. He even mailed me the label, the original, and so that's omeprazole. And then the third one is for a degenerative joint disease, and that is Terazosin, T-E-R-A-Z-O-S-I-N, I believe it's spelled. And that's another one that he takes. And the last I heard from him, now I got a letter dated June 8th. I got it the 11th. It takes a few days to get here. And he said that none of those had been restored to him, that they took those away. And a more recent letter that the other person on the outside who was in contact with him received said that he is drinking milk, but he is still not eating. And that's in a story that I just published yesterday. The letter that he sent to that person was dated June 19th and arrived to that person on June 21. But that's a very long time to go without food. You're talking from at least June 8th, possibly a couple days before. And now, today, it is June 23rd. And no one from Morgan County will get back to me. I left a message there on Tuesday or Wednesday. No one returned my call. And the TDOC seems completely unconcerned.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Sharon Rondeau. Sharon Rondeau is a journalist who is beating all journalists in Tennessee with coverage of Tennessee prisons. She has published, she says, hundreds of stories about the Tennessee prison system at thepostemail.com. So now you, my listener, if you have anyone connected with the suffering of slaves in the state human trafficking system, the prison system, make note of this website and subscribe to it as I do. I get these, when Sharon posts an email, I get it not in my fluff box, I get it in my main box. And that's thepostemail.com. It's called The Post and Email, but the URL is thepostemail.com. I think you should subscribe to it and pass word of its very hearty labors to anyone you may know who is in the prison trap in Tennessee. She is a journalist she's been running that website for 7 years and has many stories and some firsthand reporting. And the Tennessee prison stories are among those where she has firsthand insight and many contacts with the prison machinery here in Tennessee. Let me ask this, Sharon. Does the prison system somehow make an effort to keep prisoners isolated and away from visitors? Because if you move prisoners in the middle of the night to faraway parts of the state, it's impossible for families to know, really impossible for dads or mothers or wives to take time off and travel 8 or 9 hours to a far corner to a prison where their son or dad or uncle has been taken. Is an effort made by Core Civic to keep families together and to have inmates kept near where family support exists?
That's a very good question, and I would say that the way I would answer that would be the same, whether it's TDOC prison, state-run, or Core Civic-run, privately run. I have had many stories, and WSMV has also published these stories prior to this week, that relatives say that their loved ones are moved to the farthest prison that they possibly could be, in many cases, not in all, but many. Some have reported traveling 4 hours, 4.5 hours one way. Now, I know at Trousdale, many of these relatives said that they would travel that far, sometimes less, but that far, and then they would go on visitation days. These were days that were designated like Sunday for visitation, and they would wait another 3 or 4 hours to visit. And sometimes they were completely turned away because the facility went into lockdown, which has been a very big complaint, that there are always lockdowns. There are 23-hour lockdowns. And there's very good documentation that Mr. Harmer provided me himself. He made up a whole chart on the computer and everything, and it was very detailed. So, yes, the answer is yes, and it makes no sense that people are moved to a prison, let's say in West Tennessee, when their family is in East Tennessee. So it does make it very hard for people to visit, and then when they do visit, sometimes they're extremely disappointed. They might get only 45 minutes with their relative. They might get nothing at all.
The reporting on WSMV TV by Dimitra Kaladimos says in the interview with the chaplain, the one whom you've also spoken with, Sharon Rondeau, says that families are telling her that medium security inmates who theoretically pose only a moderate or no risk are kept in lockdown for weeks, she says, without showers and sometimes without food. How widespread is this danger to inmates?
Well, I think it's very dangerous. In fact, that was probably, by and large, the most significant, most numerous complaint I have received in the many letters. I'm talking probably, at this point, it's in the hundreds of letters from TTCC inmates alone. Their biggest, not a complaint, observation was that at the turn of a head, everybody goes into lockdown. And all of this was attributed essentially to short staffing. No one wants to work there, which was corroborated by WSMV in one of its reports this week. Nobody from the county, from Trousdale County, wants to work there. And so they don't have enough staff. They brought in guards from a private company called G4S. Many of the inmates had told me that. And that still didn't seem to ameliorate anything. There weren't enough of them. And they also had no vested interest in the prison succeeding, and before you knew it, they did their 3-month stint and they were gone. So there's no continuity, but it's very damaging. I think it's mentally and emotionally extremely damaging, because a lot of the inmates who were taken to Trousdale earlier last year, it opened in January of 2016, but many of them started writing to me after they were transferred there, like in late April of 2016. There was a deluge of letters that came after that. And what they said is, gee, at the other prison, usually it was a state-run prison, TDOC, they had a job, they had reasonable showers, the food was decent, and they could go to what they call the chow hall, and eat there. And at Trousdale, they were kept very isolated, and still may be. The last I heard, they were back on lockdown, but they were fed in their cells, and they said you were fed at all times of day. Your supper sometimes was delivered at 9 o'clock at night, this type of thing. It wasn't regular. So you can only imagine that when they said that the medications are not dispensed regularly, that is most likely true. And there is a federal lawsuit filed by 4 inmates who are diabetic. I did not report that exclusively. It was reported at the Commercial Appeal, I believe. So they did do a good job on
Memphis.
this, but the diabetic inmates claimed that they were not getting their medication, and it was definitely threatening their health and well-being, which of course it can be if you have uncontrolled blood sugar.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Sharon Rondeau. She publishes, I would say, a very important publication for you, my listener here in Tennessee, especially if you know anyone in the prison system or grieving family members whose husbands or sons or uncles are in that servitude to the state in what we call official slavery under our Constitution. Sharon Rondeau publishes the Post and email. Now, here's the URL. Please write this down. It's thepostemail.com. Thepostemail.com. You should subscribe to it and tell any family members you know or friends you know who are connected with this great breach of the peace, which is the prison system itself, to have these people subscribe, to follow her work. She's written hundreds of stories about the Tennessee prison system. Though she is in Canterbury, Connecticut, she's the publisher again and the chief staff writer for thepostemail.com. Sharon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you so much. This is David Tulis, and this is an important report here at Nooga Radio, AM 1240, FM 92.7. I subscribe to thepostemail.com. I think you should too. She covers many other things Sharon Rondeau doesn't. And she's a picture of the rising free market in the press. Your established press is not going to cover these issues, but she, with inside contact that has been multiplying across the months, has a remarkable view of prisons in Tennessee. David Tulis, I've got some important messages. Hang on.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.